Okay. Don't let me forget to tell you about your test, okay? That's coming up. Okay, so right before class ends, can someone like raise their hand 5 minutes before the end of class and like, okay, thanks. Okay, good. So I have a few of your stuff I'll go over, and then we'll get into the worst part of this class. This is the worst, then gets a little better, except when we get to the book of Revelation, where it starts again. Okay. So lamb, yes, we are in this ongoing discussion. It's immigration. It's supposed to be, not anymore now, right? But initially I do stand by that it was that's my fantasy, right? My plan A, that it was meant to be a mass immigration movement. Now, how do I know this? One of you mentioned this. Who was it? The water. That was you. Okay. Jesus walking on water and Joshua and Moses splitting the waters, the symbolism of that. I thought that was very interesting. So water represents the chaos, forces of chaos, right? We talked about this before. So when, and this is to the point of immigration, by the way, when Jesus walks on water, he's showing that he has power over the forces of chaos, right? He's showing himself, it's a way to symbolize himself as the creator God, right? When he's walking on water, it's very evocative. If you know the Hebrew Bible and you remember the spirit hovering over the water and bringing order out of chaos, Jesus, in a way, that action is bringing up those associations, right? Splitting the water implies moving through the chaos. This is why I stick to the immigration idea, because they're moving through the chaos. They were never supposed to initially, right, conquer and destroy, right?
Right.
They were supposed to walk through, right? And then settle in the land. So yeah, that's plan A, right? Now plan B is all messed up, right? So yes, now you can complain, but initially, right, I do stand by that it was meant to be simply an immigration, and they were meant to then from the temple that they were going to build, which was supposed to be the locus of the presence of God in the land and in the whole world, that they would radiate that presence of God onto the nations, which was the original plan in Genesis 12, right? You will be a blessing on the nations. So I continue to push back on the on your conquest narrative. Good in connection, right? The walking on water, passing through water, that's an interesting connection. Romero, good question. Why is it the priest going first in the war, right? Anybody want to interpret that? Who goes first in the war normally in the ancient Near East?
From the ancient Near, the Levium, I think, right?
Who?
Levium,
Who?
the Levies.
No, who in the ancient Near East, not in the Hebrews. In general, who goes first when you're fighting a war?
Soldiers.
No, the king. It's not like now. Yes, I know in America, we send the soldiers and the president stays home on a comfortable chair, right? But back then, the king went first, right? And so what does it mean that the priest is sent first? What does that mean? What's the implication? What's the meaning? It's an interesting question. Who does a priest represent? God, right? So this is the images. God is going, fighting for you, not God is the king who is fighting for you, not right. You're not fighting for God. So that's perhaps the meaning of that, right? In Deuteronomy 20, you notice we are talking about now imperialistic war, right? He's talking about when you go to the nations outside, right? Moses is talking about fighting the nations outside. And you're worried about how now the war is spreading, right, Romero? That's a good point. Remember that Deuteronomy 20, Moses is giving guidelines, not God, right? He's giving guidelines. Once you're in the land, and inevitably you'll want to conquer like everybody else, right? Once God is out of the picture and you guys are in control, you will inevitably want to conquer other lands, and this is how you do it, right? So we're no more in the plan, where this is no more the divine blueprint, nothing, right? This is once you're a nation by yourselves with the king, these are the guidelines, right? So he's still trying to kind of rein them in, but this type of conquest is not in the plan, right? The plan was always we populate the territory of God, build the temple, and radiate from there. There was never meant to be any type of military conquest further than that, right? Yeah.
What I said for my thing was about what you just said. Because Plan A kind of didn't happen, he's working with what he has now. What he has now is, but he's still God is still telling the Israelites to expand.
Well, in Deuteronomy 20, you mean when he tells them to go, when Moses talks about expanding? Because
I think it's Joshua.
Because expand, so there was remember when they come in, God specifically tells them, not them, not them, not them, only this section, right?
Mhm.
So God is not interested in expansion, he's interested in reclaiming his own land, right?
In Joshua 1, he says, wherever Joshua's footsteps, he will expand there.
Oh, right, in that parameters, right? In the parameter of the promised land. Beyond that, God is not interested. That belongs to the nations, right? He's trying to establish himself, right, in the land which he calls his own, I suppose. And so that's all he's interested in. Let's establish my presence here, build my temple, radiate, and then the rest will benefit, right? So there's no mention, I mean, there's really no paradigm in the context of what God wants of expansion. You don't see the Israelites fighting expansive wars, right? They're usually defending their borders, right? Yes.
There's also like linguistically, and I think I mentioned this in my thing. Like I didn't see a word in Hebrew for expansion. Like the word that's used a lot is lareshet, which is like to inherit. So
Okay.
that like is a non-violent context of like they're just taking something that was already there, sort of like relates to your.
But you're raising the hairs on Lamb's body. Yeah, that might be what the word that she's translating as
Yeah,
expanding,
I
right?
was trying to look
Yeah.
at the Hebrew and the English, and I never
Yeah.
saw anything that was like
Good.
expand.
I think the Safari says inherit as well, right? Is that what it is?
Inherit, yeah.
Maybe.
And still inherit, of course, might be a problem unless you see this land as this is specifically divine territory, right? Every god, remember, had land. Every god had their portion, right? You had the god of Babylon who owned Babylon, the god of Egypt owned Egypt, and God of Israel owns Canaan, right? So in that sense, right? Okay, interesting observation, Nikolopoulos, on number 7. That's very good. You should notice these numbers. Why Jericho 7 times? This is significant. We're gonna look at that, right? Okay. Let's get into the text. So this is part 3 of Did God Command Genocide? last section. So now we enter into, yeah, why? Yes, thank you, just in case, right? So yeah, in case then you're thinking about our community out there. Okay.
What book are we in?
And we're in Joshua. Well, we're starting actually in a number of different passages. Okay, so, all right, so now we enter Plan B. And let me recap why I think the shift happened from Plan A to Plan B, right? Remember, Plan A, they pass through, a mass immigration movement, God fights for them, the space opens up through natural disasters. That's the fantastic Plan A, right? Okay, the shift occurs in Numbers 14. And I actually found the textual evidence for the shift. So the shift was kind of, I had kind of the intuition this was the shift, but then I was so happy I found some textual evidence that this is actually the shift. So, all right, so in Numbers 14, remember, it's been only a couple months in the desert. They've left Egypt just a couple months ago. They arrive at the border, they send the 12 spies. 12 spies come back, discourage everybody, and they're like, wow, this is horrible, the land is horrible, we can't do it. And then God gets angry and says, all right, fine, you won't go then. You're going back in the desert for 40 years. And then the people
Chapter 1,
panic.
verse 14.
Just chapter 14. Remember to raise your hand. Okay, so then, because you see, when you interrupt me like this, I lose the track of my thought, and then I don't know where I am anymore. So please raise your hand. Everybody just raise your hand. Otherwise, it becomes unmanageable. Okay, so Numbers 14, that's what happens, right? And so then they panic, right? And they decide, oh, no, we're gonna go conquer anyways. And they attack a very small city. Let's see which is the name of it. There's a name. It doesn't mention. They attack a small city, and it says, and it mentions here, and this is significant, they attacked and they were defeated by the Amalekites and the Canaanites. So these are the 2 people mentioned. So make sure you jot this down because it's going to be significant when I read a different version of this story. So here's the Amalekites and the Canaanites. They attack them, they beat them down. Okay, so at that point I was saying, you see, at this point, the people of the land whose heart had melted when they had heard, remember, this is only 2 months after the Exodus. Egypt has been completely ruined and destroyed. You can imagine the Canaanites, how they're feeling right now about what is about to happen. They're scared to death, right? The people are coming, 500,000 or more people are coming who have a powerful God on their side who has ruined Egypt. Now, I don't know if you realize Egypt is the equivalent in the ancient Near East of the US in the world. Well, what we used to be, right? So, so it's the equivalent of that, right? So imagine this nation, which is one of the most powerful nations, has been defeated by the God of Israel. And now 500,000, and men are coming so they're scared to death. Now, what happens when this tiny little town defeats the Israelites in the minds of the Canaanites? They're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Where's this God? Maybe it was just overblown, right? So now they lose the fear, which was fundamental. God was going to use the fear to create this passage, right? Now they don't fear anymore, right? So at that point, you will see there is a hardening, right? There's going to be a hardening of the Canaanite position. And when the Israelites come back 40 years later, they're ready. They have, right? They have now prepared themselves, and every single warfare will be aggressive. They will attack first, right? And so forth. So now we have a shift into violence. Do you follow the shift? So that was my hypothesis. And then I found a text which supports this. So let's see if you can catch it. So I read the same story in Deuteronomy 1. So if you go, you will see this. Same story, Moses is simply retelling the story. Remember, the book of Deuteronomy is a big speech by Moses, summarizing the whole Exodus and everything. So when Moses retells the story, there is a little change of detail. Can you tell me what it is? Deuteronomy 1, I didn't bring my Bible, very smart. Deuteronomy 1, I swear. Does anyone have a Bible?
No, right here.
May I borrow it? Thanks. Oh, don't get it. You could have just passed it. Okay, so Deuteronomy 1, thanks. So tiny. Okay. I don't know if I can read this. Okay. Okay, great. I should have prepared the verse. Yeah. Can you find the story in Deuteronomy 1? Yes, here it is. Oh man. Okay. Yes, here it is. Oh gosh. Okay, I have to look a little bit. I need a little time to look where it is, but maybe it's in verse 43. Go to Deuteronomy 1, verse 43. There it is. Okay. So he's retelling the same story I told you in Numbers 14, right? And it goes like this. Tell me what is different. So I spoke to you, yet you would not listen. You rebelled. You presumptuously went up into the mountain, right? That's when the Israelites decided we're going to fight anyways. And the Amorites who dwelt in the mountain came out against you and chased you as bees do and drove you back from Seir to Hormah. Okay. Detail is, there's a slight shift of detail. Anybody know what it is? From what I told you the Amalekites and the Canaanites destroyed them in Numbers 14. Here, who is it? Yeah. The Amorites. Okay, why is he switching? And by the way, they're not the same thing. I checked, right? The Amalekites is not the same thing as the Amorites. Different. So why is he changing the name of the nation that attacked them, right? Well, it becomes interesting when you read in Deuteronomy 2:24, where you have the first aggressive attack against Israel right after they come back after the 40 years. Read Deuteronomy 2:24, first aggressive attack, right? They're coming back. I'm trying to find 24. Okay, rise, take up your journey, cross over. I have given into your hand Sihon the Amorite. And then we read a little further and we see that there is aggressive warfare from this king, Sihon, of the Amorites. First aggression against Israel coming back. Do you see what Moses is doing here? He's doing something. He shifted the name of the people who aggressed them, right? He shifted the story of Numbers in order to make a connection, you see, between the two events. You follow?
So the Amorites are the first. So sorry.
Yeah.
The Amorites are the first a nation to attack them after they were chased away by the Canaanites.
Exactly. So they're the first nation to now enter into aggressive warfare. You see what's happening? What Moses is showing is a connection between Amorites who defeated them and the Amorites now who are going to attack them. He's showing the connection between the two events by switching the name. You see what he's doing? He switched the name intentionally, I believe, to show the connection between the two events. The defeat of the Israelites when they first tried to enter illegally the land, right? God was not there. And now this first aggressive attack are connected by the name Amorite. You see what I'm doing? So I'm interpreting that he might shift the name. It's not accurate. It's the Canaanites and the Amalekites in Numbers. Why he shifts to Amorites to show the connection between their defeat and the aggressive warfare that will now ensue. You follow the argument? That's my little textual support for yes.
Just wondering, do you think this is, you said that the Amalekites and Canaanites chase the Israelites out of their land. You think that could be referencing the fact that God, without the Israelites getting to violence, chase them out of their lands?
With the hornet and the bee, are you connecting the two? Yes, I saw that too. I saw that God was saying, I will send the hornet ahead of you. And now they chase them like bees. I think the text is making fun. The text is ridiculing them, right? Oh, you are going to be the big hornets. Now look at you, running away like bees, right? So there might be some humor, right? But there's definitely a connection where God was like, I'm going to push them out with a hornet. And then when they leave God behind, now they're bees, right? So it's a way to ridicule, but good observation, right? You guys are making the right observations. Yes.
What verse is this again?
So the first,
The Deuteronomy.
so the Deuteronomy starts in Deuteronomy 143. That's where you have the Amorites. When Moses is retelling the story, he talks about Amorites, not Amalekites, right? So Deuteronomy 143. And then in Deuteronomy 2:24, you have the first aggressive warfare of the Canaanites led by the Amorites, right? So it's like Moses is connecting the two events, right? And showing, you see, now we have to switch to plan B. Right? I was going to use the fear of the people to usher you in, but now nobody's afraid of you, so you're going to have to fight. Okay? Any questions on this shift from plan A to plan B? Good. Okay, from then on, after that point, the Amorites, bunch of other kings are going to come against them even before they enter the land, right? This is even before Joshua, right? You'll have Moab, you'll have Arad, this is the curse of also Balaam. You have all kinds of kings now who are like really emboldened, right? They're like, let's just destroy them. And by the way, they didn't even want to take over Moab, right? This is completely unnecessary. They were not going to take over Moab. Moab is God told them, that's not yours. You're going to go only into Canaan. Yeah.
So being like Israel itself aggressive.
Well, it wasn't meant, like I said, right? It wasn't meant to be aggressive, but when you're attacked, you have to respond, right?
But even before that, because God told them, do not go to war with so-and-so nation, but they were still so, again, I don't even.
Well, Moab attacked them, right? So all of these wars even before they enter the land, you have the Amorites who attack them, you have the Moabites who attack them, the Midianites attack them, and the Canaanites attack them, even before they reach. So they're not even interested in those lands. They're trying to get through those lands to get to Canaan, and on their way to Canaan, they're being attacked. So then they respond, right? And now we're in the violence, right? We're stuck in the violence. So, okay, now let's go. Any other question? Okay, let's go now into the actual conquest, because now it is a conquest of Canaan in the book of Joshua. So I want to point out a number of really interesting details in the book of Joshua, which it's almost like God is nostalgic of plan A, and he's still trying to make it happen, but you'll see that it doesn't. So let's look at that. Let's look at the conquest of Jericho, Joshua 3. So Joshua 3, you have a number of actions that the Israelites performed before the war. And this is already interesting. So let's look at that. Chapter 3, verse 5. What's the first action they're asked to do? Chapter 3, verse 5. What do you see? Okay, they have to sanctify themselves, purify themselves. Huh. Okay, now who purifies themselves, and when are you supposed to purify yourself in general in the context of the Israelite religion? The priests normally sanctify themselves, right? The Levites cleanse themselves, and in fact, to get to approach the temple, what must you do as a general person? Also, right? So this is a cultic action which has to do with, right, sacred, spiritual stuff. So already you can see right there, you can see, okay, it's as though God is reminding the Israelites, careful, this is spiritual warfare. We are still trying to do spiritual warfare, not actual warfare, right? So the consecrating yourselves is a clue that we're right. There's a kind of orientation God is trying to give, and will fail, is trying to give the Israelites, right? Like it continues. Chapter 3, verse 15. What happens? What's the next thing that happens? Chapter 3, verse 15. What do you see? Okay, but they split the Jordan. Now, where did we see this before? The splitting of the water. Egypt, right? Why are we alluding to the splitting of the Red Sea? Why is the allusion there? What did we learn from the splitting of the Red Sea when we studied the Song of the Sea? Yeah. Well, no, you're right. We're alluding to the Song of the Sea. What did we learn in the Song of the Sea about the original blueprint for war? Yes.
God is the one who fights for the people.
Exactly, right? So when he's splitting open the Jordan, it's a reminder. He's hanging on, right? Nostalgically to plan A, right? I still want to fight for you. I'm still opening up things for you. Yes.
So I'm sorry, what was the verse before this one? Before
3:5 and now 3:15,
Okay.
right? Okay. Now 5:1 chapter. We're still no conquest. We're still preparing. Chapter 5, verse 1. What do you see? Chapter 5, verse 1. This is very important. What is happening in 5:1? That is important in connection to plan A. Yeah. Go ahead. You're doing great. Go ahead.
So in a sense, God is still working as the fighter in this situation, I guess, because he dries up the water and the enemies get disheartened.
Yes, the enemies are again fearful. Perfect. We thought we had lost our touch, right? Right. We thought that the terror had been wiped, right? But no, there's hope. Okay, if they're fearful, maybe there can still be a passage here, right? So we're still, right, the plan A, where God was supposed to strike fear in the enemy's hearts, where the waters are open, where people pass through the forces of chaos. Still, there's a kind of what if this could still happen, right? Then it gets worse. 5:2, what happens? Well, you guys were talking about it today. What happened? Circumcision. Now, okay, look, we're supposed to go to war. What is going on here that he's circumcising the army that is about
that actually happened?
Yes, they're about to go to war. I don't know, 500,000 men. I mean, all of them have to go. What kind of preparation for war is this, to circumcise the man before war? Who does that? Can you fight really well when you're circumcised? Do you feel very manly and not particularly, right? Yes.
Circumcision is considered a covenant between, so it shows that
I get
God
that.
would be with you.
I understand. That's good. You're right. I'm coming to that, right? But in the material world, right? This is a spiritual world. But in the material world, if you're circumcised and you are now, I don't know how long does it take to heal. For babies, it's fast, but grown men, it's a long time. Now you got to go after they actually wait to heal. But what is God saying? You said it actually, but what is God saying by saying, I'm going to circumcise you right before you go to war? What's the message here?
So as he said, it's emphasizing that this is a spiritual concern, that like they need to strengthen the covenant first before they need to show that they're with God, and their primary concern is spirituality or like
Good.
religion. And we see this also like Moses when Moses is given his command to go and like free the Israelites, he's going with his son, and his son is uncircumcised. And at that point, like God tries to stop him and even kill him, like an angel tries to kill him until he circumcises his son. So that could be
okay, good. So it's an invitation, it's a reference to the covenant, but what else is it saying? Yes. Exactly. They're cutting down their strength. That's the source of strength. That's the source of manhood. That's the source of virility. God is cutting down that, saying, it's not you who's going to make this happen. This war is not going to be you, rah, right, going in and making this happen. I'm cutting you down so that I will then be the one fighting. You see, so it's still in the same idea of I'm weakening you that I might be strong. It's not you with your strength that's going to make this happen, right? I'm gonna so you see still this nostalgia for plan A. And then 510, this is the very important moment too. What happens in 510? This is all the way they're preparing for war, by the way. I don't know what kind of war preparation this is, right? But instead of, practicing with a sword, they're over there circumcising, becoming cleansed, celebrating Passover. Sorry, I said it. 510 is a celebration of Passover. I'm good. I got it. Okay, celebration of Passover. Okay, what's Passover? What are we reminded with Passover?
The Exodus from Egypt.
The Exodus, right?
Maybe it's a moral.
Exactly.
war.
That's exactly. You're exactly on point. God is still, he's trying to orient them in spiritual warfare rather than material warfare, right? Passover is still God fighting, right? And then you have this beautiful climactic moment on 514 where Joshua encounters somebody. Who is it? 514. He encounters somebody. Yeah. Who? Who does he encounter in 514?
The general.
Which general?
Moab.
No. Look at your
I
Bible.
was a bit confused. This is the captain of Jericho.
No,
It's not. I
no.
was confused about it.
Yes, commander of the army of the Lord. Who's that? Yeah, well, very good. Christian. It is in Christianity, Michael, but who is the commander? Is this a earthly being or a heavenly being? Commander of the army of the Lord.
Angel.
So what? Yes. Heavenly, right? Yes.
Angel.
Thank you. I appreciate you raising your hand each time. You know how sensitive I am. Watch and learn. Okay. Good. Okay. So absolutely, right? It's a heavenly being, right? He's encountering a representation of God's armies. Now, this is very powerful moment because he asks him a question. What does he ask him? So this is God, right? Or whatever, a representation of God. Yes, what is he ask?
He asks him, "Are you with us or against us?" And he
Yes.
said, "I'm impartial."
Neither, he says. That's incredible. Talking to the representation of God, divine agent, right? And saying, are you with us, the Israelites? Or are you against us? And the angel replies, neither. What does this tell us about the God of Israel? It's interesting. Yeah.
He's really just saying that he's not for the Israelites and he's not for Kenyans or anyone else. He's here to serve his own purpose.
So remember, this is God, right? So what is he saying when he says, I'm neither for you nor for them? So let's see, it's representation, it's like God, right? He's representing the God of Israel. When the God of Israel says through the angel, I'm not for you I'm neither for you nor for them. What's the lesson?
Like the verse says, I'm not for flesh. But I forgot how it worded, but it said, I'm not for the flesh. I'm not for you. I'm for the spirit.
That's interesting. Where is this verse? That's intriguing me.
In Genesis.
So in other words, what the angel might be saying, I'm not about this war y'all are about to engage in. That could be one way to see it. I like that, right? That's in the direction, right? This is not these things you're about to do. I am not there, right? Or
I guess just like kind of like from how like I kind of perceive it, with the angel God saying that I'm neither like for the Israelites or people of Jericho, like doesn't want either of them to like lose or like.
you're on the right track. You're on the right track. When God is saying, I'm not with you, Israel, what's he saying? Well, he will. We know he'll be involved. But when he says, I'm neither for you nor for them, what is he? He's saying something else. He's saying this too. I like which, but there's also another message he's saying. When he says, I'm neither for you nor for them. What's he saying about so the stance of neutrality, what's he saying? Yeah.
Maybe they're being too violent.
So we have that. That's what you guys were saying, right? Maybe God is not involved in this type of warfare that's about to happen, right? But there's something else. When God is saying, I'm not for you, might he be saying, I'm not exclusively for you, right? I'm not a tribal God who is over here on your side against them. Who do you think I am? I am God. right? I am the cosmic God. I'm neither on one side or another side. I'm with everyone. You follow what I'm saying? That might be another way to see it. When he's saying I'm not with you, he's saying I'm not exclusively your God, right? I'm not your tribal God here. I'm not neither your God nor their God. I am God, right? The one who is cosmic over. I'm both with the Canaanites, and it's a way to say almost I'm with you and with them, right? So I was seeing that there, right? The kind of this notion that be careful, do not make me into a tribal God, right? Do not think I'm over here and against them, right? That's something I was seeing that I thought was really, really powerful. Yeah.
Why is that? I thought the whole entire book is him with God like giving commands or like orders to Joshua, like do this and do that. That's what it is.
We will see some of those commands and we'll see how Joshua executes them, right? Because remember, they are meant to settle in the land, right? But how they settle in the land, there's a lot of freedom given to Joshua as far as the executive, the execution of this, right? God is like, okay, defeat them. And then Joshua and the Israelites, they have their own vision of what to do. And you'll see that, right? So absolutely. And again, now we enter plan B. So everything is twisted, right? Okay, so then we get, all right, now we get into the war, and this is when it gets interesting.
Sorry, what verse was the one with oxygen?
With the guy, 5:14, with the commander of the Lord's armies.
Thank
5:40. Now, chapter 6, verses 1 to 20, you have what Nikolopoulos remarked, 6 days that they have to go around the city, and then the 7th day, blow the trumpets and the walls come down. Okay, what's the symbolism? We saw this somewhere, didn't we? Yeah.
7 days of time.
We allusion to creation. What's the text saying here? It's kind of like, I'm so nostalgic for plan A, right? What's the text trying to say here? Unsuccessfully, yes.
That God is doing everything to return it to the way that he initially made it to be.
Yes, it's a recreation of the land. It's a rebirth. It was always supposed to be a rebirth of the land, a new creation, new ordering of that world, which is in chaos, right? So it's as though the text is saying, this is supposed to be life-giving. This is not supposed to be death-giving. This is supposed to be a recreation, right? Of course, sadly, it's not going to go in that direction, right? Now the nostalgia is over and we get into the way it was actually executed, right? But you can see so many efforts of God here to shift, to reorient the Israelites who are already hardened by war, right? Remember, they fought the Moabites, the Midianites, they fought, they had a lot of people on their way there, and aggressive warfare, yes, but they got hardened in the battle. Now he's trying to still reorient them the best he can, right? And is going to fail completely. So, yes.
It's a lot of topic, but just he's like open. Because I realized in Joshua 5:15 was a reference to the same order that God gives Moses, where the commander of the army of the Lord, he says to take off your sins first.
Yeah. Yes, it's the presence of God, right? So that indicates, and I guess the Christians see there, Michael or Jesus, right, is the one there. But yes, God is there. Take out the sandals, that's God, right? Absolutely, there's a parallel. And also, it's a parallel to show that Joshua now is the new Moses. He's invested with the same authority. It's, yeah, good observation, right? You guys are doing good. The parallels, a lot of you are starting to read very, very intelligently the text. I'm very proud of you. Yes.
Where it says march around the city once with all, where was it? The horns in front of the ark, the ram's horns is a representative of Abraham and the sacrifice
I like that.
to show the faith.
Yes, the ram's horn is connected for sure, even in the liturgy, it's the shofar. And the shofar, later we'll know, has to do with the rebirth of the world, right? In the holidays, in the fall holidays. But it could be something that's interesting. I would want to think about that, the connection with Abraham and Isaac, right? Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Remember, Isaac was almost sacrificed and there was a ram, right? So the ram's horn might have some connection. So I want to think about it because that's an interesting connection. There might be some ideas there. Let me think about it. Okay, now 6:17, we get to business, to the conquest. So here we have Who is speaking? Let me see. Joshua 6:17, go with me. He's preparing now to conquer the Jericho. So I'm finding Joshua. Everything is tiny. 6, what did I say? 6:17?
Yeah.
Okay, it's very small and you're really testing my eyes, and I'm proud of myself because I can actually read. I'm good. I'm doing good. Guys, there are Chinese eye exercises you can do, which help. The circular, when you roll your eyes, 15 times one side, 15 times the other. Actually, I have reversed my deck. Yes, my
You can
eyes.
reverse.
I have reversed.
I've heard that it slows down damage. I've never heard that.
I couldn't read this. Forget it.
Say it again, what is it?
You go like this, eye rolls, and then you go in the other direction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
seriously.
mom told me about it.
No,
I
it's
just
true, y'all. It's
didn't
true.
believe her.
I believe.
That you have to roll your eyes. The sun and close your eyes and do that.
Don't.
No,
look at
no,
it.
no, no, no.
Like, close your eyes and do it.
Okay, comic relief before the destruction of the city of Jericho. Okay, 6:17. Now the city shall be abandoned by the Lord to destruction. Okay, now remember the word here is haram, which we talked about last time. Let's review haram. What is the meaning of haram as we studied it last time? Yes. It's forbidden, and so it means one thing you separate, like in the Arabic, right? And there's another meaning of haram. No, it has to do, yes?
Isn't it like unclean or something?
It's unclean, so you separate, but what else must you do to an area that is haram? It also has a cultic meaning, right? To devote to God. What does that mean to devote to God, right? Remember, like when you separate some offering to devote to God, it's the same word, haram. What does it mean to devote to God? What does it mean with you? So you separate, so there's that. Okay, so we're still in the separation. There's one more meaning of haram, as it was explained in Deuteronomy last time we parsed it. Yes.
Don't associate with it.
That's still the same idea. There's one more thing that we studied last time. Go to your notes. To devote. I quoted Deuteronomy 7. Deuteronomy 7, do I have it? Yes. Haram. It says you must haram, and then it explains 7:3. Do not intermarry, break their altars, smash their sacred stones, burn their idols. What's the second meaning of haram? What do you destroy? The idols. Okay, so according to Deuteronomy 7:2 and 3, haram does not necessarily imply bloodshed. Are we good? What I'm seeing from the definition of Deuteronomy 2 and 3 is a separation and the destruction of idolatry. It is you devote the land to the Lord, meaning you create cosmic harmony in that region, meaning you destroy idolatry. You make sure that place, you separate, of course, you don't mingle, but and you also at the same time destroy. Whatever you destroy is idolatry. Are we convinced by that? Now, yes, everybody with me on this, right? Doesn't imply necessarily bloodshed. Now look at what the Israelites do. 6:21. This is in our commentary on. Okay, so the whole story happened. They went around 6 times. The walls came down. Then they go into the city, and this is what they do to the city. 6:21, and they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man, woman, young, old, ox, sheep, donkey, with the edge of the sword. So now you have the word haram, but you have a qualifier added to it, which is the edge of the sword, right? So they devoted violently through bloodshed, right? The edge of the sword was not in Deuteronomy. This is a new addition. It qualifies how they have done this. They devoted it through the edge of the sword. And the man, woman, and so forth, and everything, right? Everything is destroyed. They kill everything. Animals, men, women, children, right? So this is a nuance, right? This is problematic because initially you had this nonviolent description, but remember, and this is perhaps why the Israelites proceeded as they did, is that haram was also an ancient Near Eastern concept. And in the Near East, you would destroy everyone. There was perhaps a way to do it without, but here they do it by the edge of the sword. And so we know that this has been done violently. Yes.
Yeah. So like, I guess like, yeah, the connection with like from the beginning, like prepping of the war, like everything like was supposed to be done like through God, like the
Exactly.
circumcision, and like they weren't supposed to like cause any bloodshed. But now with the saying of through the edge of the sword by human, like a human.
You got it, right? It's the circumcision has become the sword, right? Circumcision meant, you know, and the sacrifice of Isaac is interesting because it's a cutting of, right? It's a sacrifice, and here it's now. So sacrifice versus bloodshed, right? Sacrifice where I let God, and bloodshed where I take over, right? And what's interesting is, so some scholars have counted the number of times God's name is used and the number of times Joshua's name is used in this story. And it's 10 times God's name. And normally it should be 1 or 2 Joshua, right? Because we want God to do the fighting. It's 10 times Joshua's name. So now you can see that there's, instead of God doing the fighting, you have human beings fighting side by side, right? And as human beings increase, violence increases, right? The coming out of the Red Sea or escaping Egypt was meant to be no blood, no bloodshed on the parts of the Israelites, right? Now human being is starting to fight. Human beings are starting to take over the project, and the violence is rising. You follow? Okay, so this is this is the beginning of the end. Yes.
You said God's name comes up and 10 times throughout Joshua or just in this?
Just in this story, Jericho, story of Jericho. Go home, count number of times God is mentioned, number of times Joshua is mentioned, 10 each. Equality, right? It's no more God fighting now. It's they're both. Joshua has stepped up. He's fighting too. Now, it gets
Different from Moses and God.
What do you mean Moses and God?
Like when Moses is becoming the commander, whatever. Is that the same in that space too? Or is it different?
You mean when they come out of Egypt?
Yeah.
When they come out of Egypt, it's God, God, God. In the Song of the Sea, God, 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 right? There's no name of Moses. It's all God, 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 right? Now we have, right? Joshua has stepped up. Joshua is kind of, he's as important now as God, right? This is problematic, right? So, and you have the increase of violence. Yes.
Maybe since Joshua led the war, he has a little bit of God in him, and that's why the mention is equal.
The key is what you said. Joshua led the war. Who was supposed to lead the war?
God.
God. Why is Joshua leading the war?
Because
Why is
God put himself in Joshua.
God put himself in Joshua?
Maybe to lead a moral war without the killing.
There is no moral war. This is an oxymoron. There is no, let's get this straight once and for all, ever. There is no moral war, right? This is not a biblical idea. The idea of a holy war or moral war is problematic because in as much as people are dying, you can't have morality, right? This is why I emphasize the plan A. I think God meant to do this without bloodshed, right? But now Joshua is leading the war, right? Joshua is leading the war when God is supposed to be leading the war. And now that Joshua is leading, we are in the human context and the rise of violence, right? Now it gets worse. We thought this was bad. Let's go to the defeat of I. Look at this now in chapter 8:2. It's interesting. So in 8, we're in the others next city. Yeah. So they go to the next town, right? And so the guideline now is a little different, right? God is shifting the guideline. 8:2. He's saying, do not be afraid. I have given you the city, right? Okay, yes. Let's see if I can pull it off. Yes, I have given into your hand the king of Ai, his people, his city, the land. Now watch what he says. You shall do to Ai and to its king as you did to Jericho and its king. Only its spoil and its cattle you shall take as booty for yourselves. Now, it's interesting because booty or plunder usually includes the women and children, right? Plunder, women and children are considered plunder, right? So he's saying here, you shall kill the king, and which implies the army, but the plunder and the livestock you keep, right? Plunder, when you see the word plunder, you understand women, children, money, whatever, right? Slaves and so forth, right? So the goal here is it's only a military attack. You attack the man, the king, and the rest you take for yourselves, right? The women, the children, yeah.
Is that the case here? Because saying like only its spoil and its cattle.
Exactly, and the spoil,
Actually considered-
they're considered spoil, right? If you read, for example, Deuteronomy 20, 20, 10 to 14, you have an association of women and children with plunder. So when you see the word plunder, it implies the women and children, right? Okay. What do the Israelites do? Do you remember the story? Should I retell it? Or does anyone remember how the war actually goes? So they were supposed to only fight the men, take the women and children as plunder. What happens instead? Yeah. Yeah. They ambushed the men. When they were done with the men, where did they go? When they were done with the men and the king, they killed them. Where did they go? They went back to the city, which was full of women and children, and they destroyed everyone, right? So this is if you've ever been to war, you know this is a psychological phenomenon. You get intoxicated by the blood and you want more and more and more. And this is, we're seeing this. They were intoxicated by their victory, and now they are so intoxicated by the spilled blood, they go and they want to continue. And they kill the women, the children, everything, right? And now guess how many times the name of God is used, and guess how many times the name of Joshua is used. You're about right. Name of God used 4 times, Joshua 14 times. You see the shift? The text is saying something. It's saying, as the men are taking over this project, the violence is increasing and God is receding, right? This was not the plan, right? God is still helping, right? But he's not present in that, at least that's my argument, right? God is not comfortable with what is happening. This is not the project, right? We're moving away slowly from the blueprint, and then things just get more and more violent. Actually, these are the 2 main wars. Strangely, after that, I don't see any more wars. The wars start again during the book of Judges. So once the Israelites have taken over, so there's just these 2 main conflicts, then, kind of they settle. During the book of Judges, once they've taken over, you have a lot of attacks, and they're still fighting a lot. The book of Kings, it gets more and more bloody, right? But it becomes very interesting because in the book of Kings, well, let's go there. I gave you the wrong reading. First Kings is Second Kings. Second Kings chapter 6 and 7. So I want to end on that note because we're going to see here way much further in Israelite history where you have already so much blood has been spilled, right? And you get to a very interesting story, which I'll just tell you. I'll just tell you the story and you can read it in Second Kings chapter 6 and 7. So this is, at the heart of, wartime, right, in Israel. This is when things have just moved into more and more violence, more and more bloodshed. And you have this strange story of one of the kings of Israel is in, I think Jerusalem, and he's surrounded by the Arameans. It's in one of the nations from the north. They've surrounded the city and they're about to be destroyed by them, right? And there's a prophet in the city and he has a servant, and the servant is quaking. He's so scared. And the prophet says, he asks God to open the eyes of the servant. And when the servant's eyes are opened, he sees the armies of God surrounding the city, right? Instead of the Arameans. And so what happens then is the prophet goes out to meet them. This is aggressive warfare. He goes out by himself to meet them, and he asks God to strike them with blindness. So now the whole army is blind. And then he says, let me lead you, right? He's kind of tricking them. He says, let me lead you to your enemy. And he leads them in the city and then closes the doors. And they're basically, right, it's absolute, I mean, they're finished. It's over. Like, they will be killed. They will be completely destroyed, right? And so the king of Israel takes his sword and he's like, shall I kill them, my father? Shall I kill them, right? Talking to the prophet. And the prophet is like, no, you will feed them. You will give them food and you will send them on their way. Incredible story, right? Complete reverse. And he does that. He makes a feast, they eat, they go back, nobody is killed, and they never attack Israel again, at least for a while. They come back later, but for a while they stay over there. So I wanted to end with that story, which you should read at home, Second Kings 6 and 7, where you see the subversion of the paradigm of where we have gone, right? Where Israelites have gone, this increasing violence and bloodshed. It's like the prophet, in a way, at that moment, is reminding, right? This is how we could do things, right? We could welcome each other and we could negotiate and we could, respect each other. And this could be the model of how we do things around here, right? Yes.
You sure it's Second King?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Second Kings 6 and 7, chapter 6 and 7. You see the
It's different.
What do you mean it's different?
Like, which
Oh, okay.
side is
What I just said.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I wanted to end on this, just to give you that within the biblical text, you have incredible discomfort with what the direction that has been taken, right? And one of the biggest discomforts, I'll just finish with that, has to do with King David. King David was an incredible military commander, and he was constantly butchering everyone around him. And usually in the ancient Near East, when a king wins a battle, which was his case, he was incredibly good, he builds a temple to his God. That's a way to honor the God who helped him win the battles. And when David, who was also a poet and also an architect, he had already designed the temple, wanted to build it. What does God say? Anybody remember? So, I mean, he deserves to build it because he won all the wars of God, right? Yes.
Says no, because you have too much blood on your hands.
God says, you will not build my temple. You can't, you have too much blood on your hands. I will not accept a temple from somebody who has killed so many, right? So many creatures. So he doesn't get to build a temple. It's his son, who was a man of peace and who interestingly was the only king in Israel who had peace with the nations, surrounding nations. He had, Solomon, right? He's the one who gets to build a temple. So you have incredible, in this context of the Pentateuch, you have a lot of discomfort that is expressed with regards to the direction that Israel took, the violent direction that Israel took, right? And so that's, but definitely it happened, and the text itself is uncomfortable with it. That's what I wanted to say. The text itself is uncomfortable with it. God is uncomfortable with it. And that's important to remember, right? That's why I emphasize this idea of just war, right? Or moral warfare is not a biblical idea. I don't believe I don't know who created it, but it doesn't fit, because God cannot associate with bloodshed. I maintain that, right? The God of the Bible doesn't associate with bloodshed. He's holy from death, right? So, all right, any questions or discomforts or nuances?
And we have objections.
Yeah, of course. By all means,
So-
yes.
So basically, was it because it was like the same blueprint over here where he was asked to kill so and he ended up killing more?
Who?
For King David.
So yeah, King David, this is aggressive warfare. I mean, he's kind of working with God, but this is still we've gone so far now, we don't even remember plan A, right? So it's aggressive warfare, it's problematic. We find out that it has been problematic when God says, no, you won't build my temple. That's that's super offensive to a king, right? Who's won all the wars, to not be allowed to build it. I mean, he's in a way humiliating him. But you see then at that moment is revealed the discomfort of God with those wars, right? So yeah, what's your objection?
Right. So what then do you make of passages where God, where God commands punishments that include death? Like in Noah, we have the famous statement of, "He who sheds the blood of man shall have his blood shed by man, for man was made in the image of God." Like, or other areas where God gives laws, and the punishment for those laws is the death penalty, and like that. It seems that shows that not only is death permissible, but morally obligated in those situations.
Good.
And so I've always
objection.
seen the same way we can have moral death. War is just that on a massive scale.
I'll answer both, right? So there's a few cases where somebody trespasses the boundaries of holiness and dies. For example, the sons of Aaron are struck down in the temple,
Uh-huh.
and the person who tries to keep the ark, right, from falling, this is nothing to do with the law, right? These are instances of people trespassing on the divine realm and just being zapped, I suppose, right? So there's the element of holiness, where if you trespass, you die. It's not even a punishment. It's like, you come too close to God, you will die. So unless you have the protocol, right? So there's instances like that.
We talked about in Noah how that dichotomy doesn't actually exist, where it's the punishments and the consequences are really just one and the same thing.
Yeah, that's in the context of trespassing sin, right? Trespassing the laws of the universe. When you try to not, keep the ark from falling, you're not breaking any laws of the universe, right? That's an instance where, there's a few instances like that also in the New Testament, where the person trespasses the boundary of holiness and ends up dying, right? Which is a natural consequence of coming too close to God. The other things you mentioned with the law, which prescribes stoning and so forth, remember, we have to distinguish between the Ten Commandments, which are divine absolute law, and then the law of Moses. Law of Moses is negotiable. You have changes, and we talked about this when we talked about homosexuality, right? The law of Moses, we saw this with the laws of inheritance. It's flexible, right? So, and it's really Moses commenting on the divine Ten Commandments, which are written by the hand of God, right? So that's the first point. So these laws are coming from a human hand, right? But moreover, and this is really interesting, in the Talmud, or at least in the whole history of Israel, apart from the stoning of Achan, right, who took the plunder, you don't have instances, and the rabbis comment on this, why the death penalty was never used in Israel. And they say this because, and they explain, there's a law in the rabbinic context where if you cause a person to die through the death penalty and they were righteous, you will die. So the rabbis are like, let's just not, because who knows, maybe we're wrong. So they never used the death penalty, even though it's in the law. They never used it because of this other law that if you make an innocent person die, their blood will be on your head. So they're so worried that they might have judged wrong that they never actually used the death penalty. So it's there through, I believe, human interpretation, or Moses is developing, right, the Ten Commandments, which is the absolute, and he's developing that, but then they never even really applied it because they were so worried of being wrong, right? You follow me? So.
But yeah, I agree with that, and I agree because, I mean, Sammy, you probably know this better than I do. Who was the rabbi that said that if the court executes somebody once in 10 years, that makes them a bloody court?
I don't know the rabbi, but I know the quote.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we're familiar with that sentimentality, but that means that in practice, it might not have been done much, but the concept exists.
Yeah, in the
The
Mosaic law,
concept
which
exists.
I distinguish, right? So I do distinguish between the Ten Commandments, which were written by the hand of God, which cannot negotiate, and then Mosaic law, which we see as itself flexible with itself. When the laws of inheritance, which Moses wrote, is changed, right, to allow women to inherit, we see that the law is negotiable. At least that's telling me that there are aspects of the law which could be negotiable, right? So in that sense, it's not written in stone, and I believe it's an interpretation of Moses of the divine law, right? So it's a human elaboration. So in that sense, it's not God saying stone them. So it's hard to hold the line I'm holding. It's not easy. I'm shaky, but I'm surviving, right? It's hard to hold that line that God is utterly distinct from death, right? It's not easy because so many evidences, right, of God behind, but I'm trying. Does that respond a little bit? It's not easy. Okay, good. Anything else? Yes.
Yeah, about the exam.
Yes, the exam. Thank you. That's why you're still here, all of you. I was wondering why everybody was still here. Okay, you have the questions are on Blackboard or whatever, Brightspace, and you pick one. And remember, when you answer 1.5 pages, single spaced, right? You answer, remember, this is something some of you need to learn. Whatever you say, I need the reference in the text and I need the argument. Don't just give because remember, I'm arguing something that is not mainstream, right? Most people are like pretty cool with God killing everybody, right? It's like serves them right, right? So I'm trying to argue something very different and I'm giving arguments, right? So you need to recover the argument and outline the argument that I make for whatever thing you say, right? So be careful with that. So,
So,
and I'll make it do Tuesday. Shall we do Tuesday? Yes?
is it the same questions as the first exam?
Of course not. It's different questions.
It's already there?
Yes, it's on Brightspace. Yeah. So at the same time, you have your essay, which I'm a little more flexible with. So the essay is personal reflection, your human journey, whatever, anything that caught your attention that is, important for your own human journey, you tell me about it. And, whatever was something caught you personally, right? 1.5 pages, single space, due technically on the day of the test. Yeah. Cool. Yes.
So
Yes.
it has to be a reference from the text and the argument that we covered.
Yes.
Oh.
So it's all based on the notes. Don't study anything else, right? But really try to really learn the argument. Try to really follow the argument for what I'm saying, right? When I'm saying, plan A, plan B, how do I argue this, right? Where in the text did I see evidence that there is a plan A or a plan B, right? That's what you need to be able to follow, right? Okay. Let me stop this.
Is there anything